Good morning, everyone. My hair is looking particularly Conan O'Brien-ish today, so it's a perfect time to make a video. Coming back to you today, another one of my Babble videos where I talk about some of my favorite albums, favorite artists, these kinds of things, you know, whatever I feel like talking about. So I'm not that old. I'm getting up there in age, you know, but there's some bands that by the time I was kind of becoming musically aware and you know, getting into music and things like that, there was a few bands that had already kind of come and gone, and you know, even as I was a young person, the bands were still regarded as legacy acts, you know, bands like the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, stuff like that. One of the bands that kind of falls into that category is Pink Floyd. And so Pink Floyd, I don't think I have to tell you who they are, you know, possibly the biggest selling musical act, or rock band for sure of all time. Like, you know, Elvis, the Beatles, they all kind of intermingle with each other and trade back and forth with that. But, you know, an album like Dark Side of the Moon is pretty much most anyone that's into music has that in their collection. Just one of those albums that just, you know, it just goes outside of all, you know, genres. Everyone likes it. And so as a young person, I was keenly aware of who, you know, Pink Floyd was. But it just, my taste kind of aligned much more with kind of like hard rock, more up-tempo, more kind of pop, more kind of sometimes aggressive music. You know, I was young and I was full of piss and vinegar and just I was looking in that direction. And so Pink Floyd was kind of the, you know, yeah, whatever, everybody regarded it as like stoner rock or, you know, whatever. Like there's all these stories about it, and you know, the movie Dazed and Confused talks about it, and you know, anyways. So it wasn't what I was looking for at the time. And, you know, not to say that I wasn't, I realized obviously the impact that the band had and the importance and things. And I knew the songs, and it wasn't the right time for me to hear them. And so as I aged and, you know, mellowed out, man, or whatever you want to say, and so my appreciation for the more mellower kinds of music has tended to kind of grow over the years. And so I decided, you know, I got my hands on some when I was putting my vinyl collection together and just grabbing these things. And you know, we're talking almost 20 years ago now when I started buying records again. You know, things weren't too expensive and not like it is now. And so I was able to get, like, you know, the Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall and these records and kind of actually sit down and experience them outside of a CD, or, you know, streaming was picking up at the time. And so I was able to kind of go back and listen to them in their intended format, in their intended ingestion. And my appreciation for them kind of grew. You know, I let down my guard a little bit, and things, you know, walls I had built up, and you know, just kind of opened myself up to these things. And you know, obviously it appeals to a lot of people. And I thought, well, you know, I don't know what exactly I'm resistive to here, but let's dig in a little bit more than the singles or whatever. And you know, and you know, my eyes kind of slowly opened to these albums, and you know, just the impact, and like I really made me focus on like kind of the songwriting and a lot of the storytelling and world building that kind of happens within the Pink Floyd kind of world. And you know, clearly, like, you know, you have essentially a concept album. Like what The Wall is, and an entire theme and all these things built around it, and a bigger story than, you know, just a handful of hit songs. And so I started to, you know, kind of, you know, get a bit more familiar with them, and you know, I'm like the Division Bell, getting into that. And a happy kind of accident happened where I remember hearing a song on the radio, and I liked the song. I had heard the song previously, and I always liked it, but I was never really, couldn't really kind of remember who performed the song. And, and I don't remember exactly the year. It's quite a few years ago now, but it wasn't a Shazam or like an app where you could really kind of easily find music. Like if you didn't hear what the end of the song and they announced the artist, it was like it was lost. Like you didn't know who the hell played the song. And there's been lots of songs I've lost because of that exact reason. I think of it. But anyways, this one I happened to hear who the performer was, and it was a hit song. It was never on my radar, and it was a song called "Learning to Fly" by Pink Floyd. And I had no idea that it was a Pink Floyd song. Like the character is all there, and it's now in hindsight, it's quite easy to hear that it is David Gilmour singing, and it sounds like a Pink Floyd song, but it didn't occur to me that it was them. I figured if you're playing a Pink Floyd song on the radio, it would be more of Money or something like that, like one of the more well-known songs. And so having that little tidbit of information in my pocket, I started to look for the album that song was from. And so that was when I acquired Pink Floyd's A Momentary Lapse of Reason. And after giving this album a listen, this has become one of my favorite albums of recent memory. It's an old album, but it's not that old to me because I've only been listening to it for 10, 15 years, something like that. And the moment I kind of put this on and gave it a good kind of once through, immediately right back through it again, and it ended up being one of those records where I just put on front to back and then loop, and then front to back and loop. And there'll be times where I've put this album on and a couple hours have gone by and I've listened to it like 4 or 5 times in a row. It has that kind of sequencing to it. It has these kinds of like bridges between songs that are soundscapes, and it just kind of ties the whole thing together in this. It marries all the songs together, and it makes it easily listenable in one kind of fell swoop. And so yeah, "Learning to Fly" is the single that's off of this record. First off, I don't really know the history of that album this well, but I want to say that this is some point after Roger Waters is gone. And basically at this point you have Nick Mason, who is Pink Floyd's drummer, longtime member, and David Gilmour. So this is almost kind of like under the name of Pink Floyd, but more akin to a David Gilmour solo record, let's call it, just with Pink Floyd in the title. And people have, everybody has that. There's always like either like John Lennon or you like Paul McCartney, or maybe you're a George Harrison fan, and maybe even like Ringo. Who the hell knows? Everybody has their own like kind of favorite member in the band. And Pink Floyd definitely had that, where there was 2 camps. There was the David Gilmour side and there was the Pink Floyd side. The David Gilmour side and the Roger Waters side of Pink Floyd. You know what I mean? And very distinct songwriting differences, very distinct lyrics, very distinct like personalities. Some of that probably conflict internally in the band led to the greatness of the band. And in the art, conflict always makes for, if conflict can find a happy medium in the art, it oftentimes leads to greatness and friction and all that kind of stuff. And but since this is essentially, Roger Waters is gone from the band at this point, this kind of has a different feel. And it's more along the lines of like your, I can't even remember who wrote "Comfortably Numb," what camp it lies on, but the songs all kind of like ease into that, just like this very mellow, very kind of like a stoic nostalgia, like lament, like all these euphemisms for, just like these kind of more sullen parts of life and things like that. and all of the all of the arrangement and the instrumentation and things like that all kind of have this like just like a serene element to them. It's very like peaceful, and it's there is power in that as well. Some of the songs like the Dogs of War, they have these like, just kind of like these like very staccato, like like or synthesizers, I'm gonna guess is what they are, and just like these like a kind of a really powerful drumming and stuff like that to it. My favorite song on this, there's two, and one of the most beautiful songs I think I've ever heard. Just once again, not really even relating to lyrics, but just the music itself is "On the Turning Away," and that is just like lyrically and vocally, I think it's one of the greatest vocal recorded performances I've ever heard. There's just such this like clarity, and David Gilmour's voice is like so like fragile and just like on the edge of something, and it's just like you can feel it. It's like the song is all relating to like maybe time that's lost and things that have gone away from you, and maybe you can't get them anymore and stuff, and how do you relate to these kinds of things. And it's such an emotional song without really even delving too much into the lyrics and what he's actually saying. You can feel that. It's one of the greatest translations of emotion in a song I think I've ever heard. And it's beautifully recorded. This is Bob Ezrin was involved in the production of this, producing it. Also played on it, and I don't know if who recorded it. Actually, right here, by Andrew Jackson. Obviously, probably somebody that works with Bob Ezrin. But Pink Floyd was always renowned for their studio prowess, and the quality of their recordings, and the emphasis that they put on sonics and capturing these things. This is one of the best recordings that I've used this as a reference album, calibrating an audio system or something like that. Just as if you want to hear some of the best recorded music of all time for clarity and depth and space and ambience, you don't have to look much further than an album like this. And a song like "On the Turning Away" is so subtle in its musical elements. It's all about the vocal performance, and David Gilmour just is unbelievably good on it. As an already amazing singer, there's something about that song. My favorite actual song to listen to is the last song on this album, and it's called "Sorrow," and it just has this really kind of like powerful, just kind of a really good bass line. The drum beat is just kind of like, it's a very hypnotic kind of pulse to the whole song, and it just builds and builds and builds. It's quite a long song. Like I can't remember exactly how long it is, but it feels like it's over 6 minutes, and it's just constantly this kind of like a building arrangement, from the bottom to the top, and then as it gets to the end, and it's just from a time when songs kind of just there was not to say there's rules now, but this is one of the biggest bands on the planet at this time, and there was no rules with these guys. They wrote their own kind of ticket, and they just were making these songs that were kind of unconventional, and they could build out these like soundscapes. There's something to like songs that are allowed to kind of build out, and if there's an ability to build them out, sometimes you can bang your head against the wall trying to do these kinds of things, and a song should be short. But if a song can get stretched out and have these amazing kind of interludes or just building towards the end of the song or whatever it is, it's amazing when those things are allowed to flourish. And the song "Sorrow" is a perfect example of that. It's just kind of unrelenting, and yeah, this is a fantastic album. I don't know exactly. It came out in 1987. I don't know how Pink Floyd fans feel about this. I've chatted with a few in my life, and this seems to be kind of like the redheaded stepchild in the discography. Not as bad as others, but like there's very polarizing albums they have, and but this one is just, not that it's forgotten, but it's kind of like not as well regarded, I wouldn't think, even though I think it's quite amazing. And I've met a handful of other fans, and the fans that love Pink Floyd, the guys that know about this album, there's a handful that this is their favorite Pink Floyd album, and this is my favorite Pink Floyd album. So yeah, if you want to check out an album that's, Nick Mason, speaking of drummers, regarding the drum channel, you know how it works here. I don't even know if he definitely didn't play all the drums on this. There's a really interesting tidbit I read about Nick Mason once, where he was actually okay in Pink Floyd. He didn't mind if studio musicians would step in on his behalf if their style suited a song better than his. He's maybe like the most giving kind of musician I've ever read about in that sense, where his ego is so like, non-existent in the rock star and all this kind of thing, that, his sentiment is more for the betterment of the music than it is about stroking his own ego and and that kind of thing. He realizes his importance in the band, and not playing on something because it's not his style doesn't take away from his importance and his involvement. And I think that's really, really cool. It's a really, really notable thing. And drummers, because a lot of times most drummers aren't the primary songwriters in a band, or even a band leader in some ways. I think there's always this kind of like a chip on his shoulder about those types of things, and it's refreshing to see somebody as notable as Nick talk about things like that, where if somebody is better suited for the job, then he's okay with them stepping in. It's guitar players and other people have done it, but it's not so much about not being capable to record. He's clearly capable of that. It's just that the song is more important than the individual. And so if someone else can make the song better, then he's all for it. And that's cool. That's very a noble gesture as a musician, and kind of egoless in a sense. So, but yeah, getting back to the album, Pink Floyd, Momentary, Lapse, and Reason. Wonderfully recorded, amazing production, great songs. This is a good album to listen, just to kind of chill out to. There's nothing in here that's gonna, knock your socks off and get you up and dancing, but there's a lot of emotion and content. And this is the kind of album that, regardless of what, I wouldn't tell you what the emotion is to feel, but you'll feel something, I think. And if you like music, the evocation of these emotions, you'll definitely feel something. So, Momentary, Lapse, and Reason by Pink Floyd, my favorite album from them. Give it a listen. Cheers.